Good morning, everybody. For those of you who are standing at the back, there are a few seats down here. So I'm Matthew Todd. I get my own slide. I'm the moderator for the first session. I was a speaker here last year, and I'm back because I get to see Larry and get to come to Boulder, get to go through San Francisco and run in a race. But more because these meetings are extremely unusual, as I guess you all know. You don't come to many meetings like this where you're not actually sure what's going to be said. And people are from all of these different disciplines. I was hoping there'd be something about Godzilla because of the thing, but I guess there's not. You mean something else about that, right? And so this morning's session with 4 speakers and something else at the beginning is reflective of that, right? I mean, we've got bugs and food, diabetes, and innovation and placebos. It's actually representative of what this meeting is all about. Diverse things where you're not quite sure what people are going to say. And so I understand that the first thing we're going to have this morning as well is also rather different. So Bob Duke from the University of Texas Austin is going to tell us a little bit about the Etudes.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Larry, for having us back. Scott and I did say we'd like to hijack the meeting, mainly because we are convinced that the situation you're in right now, even though this is the situation that's practiced in many universities around the world, including the University of Colorado, is that this is a terrible learning environment. Like many universities, we've seated a bunch of people in chairs facing a person talking to you, looking at a screen, and the chairs are bolted to the floor. That's how committed we are to this idea. And really what I think many of you recognize is that this is not where learning happens, right? This is just a listening part, observing part, maybe thinking part. But where the real learning happens is when you start talking to people and thinking about what happens in this room and reflecting on what happens and trying to apply what happens in other circumstances. So one of the things that Scott and I first talked about when Larry invited us to do something about this is to reflect that in the way that we've set up what we're going to do. So rather than having just a time when he and I talk to you for 45 minutes to an hour, we have these little things, and as Larry said, I'm a music guy, so we called them etudes. I mean, we could have called them something else, but etudes seem to fit, where we're just going to present little things to provoke thought and hopefully provoke discussion outside of the talks. And these will be sprinkled throughout the meeting, as you can see from the program, with the thought in mind that Scott and I will bring some closure to it, if that's possible, at the end. I was very happy that Larry put up a couple slides about that wonderful article about why stupidity is important, because one of the things on one of the quotes was, we really don't know what we're doing. And now a little truth in advertising, Scott and I really don't know what we're doing. But we're hopeful and we're optimistic. And we hit a lot of times, and we're very happy to be hosted by someone who is anything but risk averse. So here we are taking a risk. And I'm going to start with something that many of you have probably heard about before because it was very much popularized when it came out, and that's what I call the Monty Hall problem. So I'd like to just kind of find out first, how many of you have heard about the Monty Hall problem before? So many of you, great. So many of you haven't, right? One of the things interesting about this problem is it was popularized through Parade magazine with a writer named Marilyn Vos-Savant. Very interesting person, they list her IQ in her bio, which is a little embarrassing to me, but they do. And what's interesting to me is, when people are often talking about, I'm not sure I can be very successful in life because my IQ isn't that high, I say, someone told me once that Richard Feynman's IQ was in the 120s, Marilyn Vos-Savant is at over 140, she writes for Parade magazine, he won a Nobel Prize, I don't think you have anything to worry about. So, but anyway, for those of you who don't know the problem, I'll just sort of go through it relatively quickly. Remember the show Price is Right? At the end of the show, Monty Hall would show 3 curtains or 3 doors. He would say behind one of the doors is a car, behind the other 2 doors is some less desirable thing. We'll use goats in this example. And he invites people to choose a door. And everybody pretty much agrees at the outset that the probability of getting the car is 1 in 3. And so I'm going to make a hypothetical scenario here and say, okay, we choose door number 2. And then to make the show interesting, Monty then asks you, well, actually, before I show you, what's behind door number 2, I'm going to show you behind door number 3, there's a goat. Let me ask you now, would you like to keep the door that you originally picked, or do you want to switch to door number 1? What would you rather do? And there's a little bit of a conundrum there, right? Now, of course, the question is it advantageous to switch to door number 1, or should you stay with door number 2? Now, for those of you who are familiar with this problem, you're feeling very smug right now because you know the answer. And for those of you who don't know this problem, you may be thinking that you're pretty confident in your answer, but you're not sure. This may be a trick. It's not a trick. It's really straightforward. And what most people, I think, say is that it doesn't make any difference, right? Because you have 2 choices. And intuitively, we know if you have 2 choices, you have a 50-50 chance of being right. So, of course, it doesn't make any difference if you switch. But actually, the real result is, if you stay with door number 2, as your choice was when you originally picked the door, you have a 1 in 3 chance of winning the car. If you switch to door number 1, after Monty shows you where the goat is, the chance of winning the car are actually 2 in 3. And you double your chances of winning the car if you switch. Now, the reason Scott and I decided to start with this is the extent to which that just doesn't feel right. I mean, some of you know, damn it, that's wrong. There's a story that may be apocryphal that the great mathematician Paul Erdős vehemently denied the truth of the fact that you have a 2/3 chance of winning the car if you switch, until someone actually did a couple thousand iterations of this problem on a computer, and he looked at the data and had to concede that, yes, you do have a 2/3 chance of winning the car if you switch. Now, the reason we show this example this morning is this. It illustrates something very interesting about us, and something that most of us in this room may not think about on a regular basis, because most of us in this room who do research and publish and do science traffic in information. And we're relatively convinced that if there's someone who holds a different view than we hold, the way to change their mind is to provide more information for them. Because obviously, if you had the same information that I had, you would come to the same conclusion that I've come to. That is almost never the case. Any of us who have gotten reviews back from articles we submitted from cretins who just didn't really see the wisdom of our arguments, or whatever the situation happens to be, recognize that it's more than information. So my little poking this morning in this first etude is to consider that fact. And what I invite all of you to do during a break, for those of you who feel very strongly about knowing the right answer about that problem, is to talk to someone who thinks differently about it than you do. Okay, that's your assignment before our next etude. Like I said, there'll be 5 of these. I'm sure after some of them, you will walk out of here going, what the hell was that about? Our work is done. So Larry, thank you, and I'll see you later today. Thanks very much.